In the National Football League, a championship window is an incredibly fragile, fleeting thing. It doesn't just slowly, gently close over the course of a few years. No, it shatters. Everything can change in a matter of literally seconds. One bad step on the turf, one catastrophic injury to a foundational player, and suddenly an entire franchise is forced to look into the mirror and ask themselves a massive question. Do we surrender or do we go to war? Welcome to This Explainer. Today we're breaking down one of the absolute most aggressive, high-stakes off-seasons in recent NFL memory. We are looking deep into the massive financial gambles, the microscopic roster tweaks, and the brilliant tactical chess moves of the Carolina Panthers. So let's dive right in.
Look, to truly understand the future of this team, you have to feel the agony of their past. The 2025 wildcard round against the Los Angeles Rams, that was supposed to be a crowning achievement for a franchise that had been steadily, painstakingly climbing from the absolute basement of the NFL since 2023. But instead, it became a complete nightmare, a devastating 34-31 heartbreak right at home in Bank of America Stadium. But the final score wasn't even the deepest cut. The true tragedy, the exact moment that literally silenced the stadium and completely altered the trajectory of the entire franchise, was watching their franchise left tackle, Ikem Ekwonu, fall to the turf. A ruptured patellar tendon. It's a horrific, catastrophic injury that left his immediate and long-term future in serious doubt. That loss didn't just end a football season. It created an off-season of absolute, pure desperation. And it triggered a front office declaration of war.
Section 1. The $100 million gamble.
When your franchise left tackle goes down in a gut-wrenching playoff elimination, a general manager really only has two choices. You can fold your hand, or you can push every single one of your chips to the center of the table. GM Dan Morgan, well, he chose the latter. $120 million. Let that staggering number just sink in for a second. In a league governed by a famously strict salary cap, this is an absolutely astronomical sum of money. That is the massive, colossal 4-year commitment the Carolina Panthers just handed to former Philadelphia Eagles edge rusher Jalen Phillips. Guys, this isn't just a standard free agent contract, it's practically a ransom. Morgan knew the Panthers desperately needed an elite, game-wrecking presence off the edge to single-handedly dismantle an opposing quarterback's internal clock, and you just don't acquire that kind of premium, elite talent on a discount. You pay the ultimate price.
And the crazy thing is, Morgan compounded that initial shockwave almost immediately. He didn't just stop at the edge. $45 million? That is the heavy financial toll for a 3-year contract acquired to bring in former Jacksonville Jaguars linebacker Devin Lloyd. Within a matter of hours, the Carolina Panthers totally reset the middle of their defense. They identified a glaring weakness, a real softness in their defensive core, and they attacked it with an absolute mountain of cash. This is exactly what pure desperation combined with ultimate ambition looks like in the modern NFL. By committing these massive sums, Dan Morgan is essentially screaming to the rest of the league that for Carolina, the time is right now.
But here's the thing about building a championship roster. It's never just built on $100 million whales. The NFL is always won and lost in the microscopic, granular details. So, right beneath the massive spending for Phillips and Lloyd, Morgan brilliantly layered in some highly calculated, low-cost stability. He brought back veteran safety Nick Scott on a really cheap 1-year deal to help solidify the back end of the defense. But the real masterstroke here? Striking absolute gold in the 5th round of the draft by grabbing Penn State safety Zakee Wheatley. You see, you absolutely need the exorbitant stars to shine, for sure, but you desperately need those 5th-round rookies and those grinding 1-year veterans to hold the foundation together when the inevitable midseason injuries strike. It's a brilliant, high-wire act of roster building.
And the rest of the league is certainly taking notice. As Tyler Sullivan over at CBS Sports put it, quote, Carolina went hard in free agency to improve its defense. Immediate difference makers. Sullivan actually handed Carolina a B+ grade for their off-season work, which, by the way, is the absolute highest grade in the entire NFC South. But frankly, that might be way too conservative. If these new faces can actually gel under head coach Dave Canales this season, we aren't just looking at a B+. We are looking at a potential A+ masterclass in aggressive roster construction. They didn't just settle for good enough. They identified the exact fatal flaws that ended their season, and they surgically repaired them.
Section 2. Protecting the franchise.
Now, all of that massive defensive spending, it literally doesn't matter if your franchise quarterback is constantly picking turf out of his face mask. Keeping Bryce Young upright is an absolute non-negotiable necessity. But Carolina had a massive interior problem. Look at this center carousel. Austin Corbett, Brady Christensen, Cade Mays. That's 3 different starting centers between 2024 and 2025, all utilized for various reasons. And today, all 3 are completely gone. You simply can't build a consistent passing attack when the man snapping the football changes every other week. So Morgan went out and executed some incredibly calculated additions. He signed former Jaguars and Saints center Luke Fortner to a one-year deal to provide an immediate veteran anchor, and then he went out and drafted highly regarded Kansas State rookie Sam Houston in the 5th round. They completely eradicated a chaotic carousel and replaced it with a very deliberate, two-pronged attack.
But fixing the center position was really only half the battle up front. We have to go back to that devastating playoff moment where Iken Ekwonu tore his patellar tendon. With the blind side completely, utterly exposed, Morgan knew he couldn't just patch this massive leak with some random practice squad player. He executed urgent, step-by-step chess moves to rebuild the wall. First up, he signed former Packers left tackle Rasheed Walker to a one-year deal. That's your immediate plug-and-play stopgap to stop the bleeding. But knowing they needed long-term insurance for Young's blindside, he then drafted University of Georgia tackle Monroe Freeling in the massive 1st round. Guys, this is exactly how a front office saves the season before it even kicks off. You identify the crisis, you apply the tourniquet with Walker, and then you find the long-term cure with Freeling.
And you might be wondering, why does all this grueling offensive trench warfare actually matter? It matters because of one man, Tetairoa McMillan, your 2025 NFL Offensive Rookie of the Year. 70 receptions, 1,014 yards, 7 touchdowns. He is rapidly emerging as a legitimate, terrifying superstar in this league. When you give Bryce Young a truly clean pocket, when you solidify that center spot and brilliantly rebuild the blind side, you are directly fueling this connection. Bryce Young has already shown an incredible knack for late-game heroics. Now, armed with actual time to throw and a dynamic star in McMillan, this offense has the potential for absolute explosion.
Section 3. The Prodigal Son returns.
So the offensive line is set, but there is a massive tactical chess move currently echoing through the NFL rumor mill. It's a story of a fallen star, a guy pushed out of his own home, and a potential storybook redemption. I'm talking about safety Jeremy Chinn. Let's rewind for a second. Back in 2020, Chinn produced a rookie season of absolute, unquestionable dominance. He was a literal force of nature on the field. But fast forward to 2023, and this really baffling trend began. Under defensive coordinator Ejiro Evero, Chinn's usage was inexplicably reduced. A player who used to fly all over the field was suddenly pushed out of the system, and by 2025, he found himself shipped off to the Las Vegas Raiders. It was a pretty dramatic fall from grace. But as we look at the landscape of 2026, the pieces for a rare, poetic NFL reunion are aligning perfectly.
To truly understand exactly what this current defense has been missing, we need to obsess over Chinn's historic rookie masterpiece for just a minute. Look at this. 117 total tackles, an interception, 5 pass breakups, 2 forced fumbles, 2 fumble recoveries, and a sack, all as a safety. I mean, think about that. These aren't just good numbers. These are game-changing, chaotic metrics. This is the exact type of dynamic, unpredictable energy this Carolina defense needs on the back end. A player who can line up anywhere, disguise complex coverages, and just violently attack the football.
And if you're sitting there thinking Chinn may be lost a step since being pushed out of Carolina, the analytics tell a highly compelling story. During his first campaign out in Las Vegas, he posted a 67.7 overall Pro Football Focus grade, which was his best grade since 2021. But the real standout metric here, his 69.5 run defense grade. That places him in the 67th percentile among all safeties in the entire league. And we all know Carolina absolutely loves to stop the run. It's the absolute foundation of their defensive philosophy. Furthermore, Chinn missed a very modest 9.9% of his tackle attempts. The guy is still an elite run defender who can play effectively in the box, and that very specific skill set is practically begging to be reintegrated into this Panthers unit. So how does Carolina actually get him back? Well, the window just cracked wide open. The Las Vegas Raiders just drafted defensive back Tre'Davious Stukes, a young player with a nearly identical, do-it-all skill set to Chinn's. Because of this draft pick, Chinn has suddenly become a prime trade candidate as OTAs start to ramp up, making him essentially expendable in Vegas. This creates the absolute perfect, cheap window for Carolina to swallow their pride, pick up the phone, and bring the prodigal son home. And the best part, he wouldn't even need to be an every-down starter. He could be deployed as a specialized, lethal weapon on passing downs. It's a tactical move that honestly just makes way too much sense.
Section 4. Seizing the Divided South.
Let's zoom out for a second. GM Dan Morgan didn't just spend $165 million in a total vacuum. No, he looked out at the macro landscape of the NFC South and saw a fractured, bleeding kingdom that is just begging to be conquered.
The 2025 season was a gridlock, an absolute bloodbath of mediocrity. The Carolina Panthers finished with 8 wins. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers, 8 wins. The Atlanta Falcons, 8 wins. You had 3 completely desperate teams tied at 8-9, and all 3 of them finished 3-3 within the division itself. Literally, no one could take control. No one had the firepower to pull away from the pack. But while the rest of the division is currently just shuffling their feet, Carolina has heavily armed themselves for war.
Let's actually contrast the trajectories here. On one side, you have the Carolina Panthers, aggressive war chest spending, a clear upward trajectory, a front office pushing every single asset into the middle of the table. On the exact opposite side, you have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They are bleeding critical, foundational, Hall of Fame level talent right now. They lost their legendary wide receiver Mike Evans to the 49ers. They lost their iconic linebacker Levante David to retirement. So while Carolina is actively fortifying its castle and acquiring massive talent, Tampa Bay's defensive and offensive walls are literally crumbling down around them.
And then you look down to Atlanta. And guys, it is utter, spectacular chaos. The Falcons just fired head coach Raheem Morris. They brought in Kevin Stefanski, fresh off being cut loose by Cleveland. But the real disaster, the situation that historically derails franchises for years, is happening under center. They are currently embroiled in a massive quarterback controversy between Michael Penix Jr. and Tua Tagovailoa. We all know the old football proverb, right? When you have 2 quarterbacks, you actually have no quarterbacks. The Falcons are trying to rebuild their entire offensive identity on the fly. This is exactly why Carolina is perfectly positioned to seize the throne. The South is divided, distracted, and incredibly weak.
Section 5. This is not over yet.
So we've detailed the exorbitant signings, the desperate draft picks, the massive offensive line reconstruction, and the glaring weakness of the NFC South. But we have to really understand the sheer gravity of this exact moment in time. This isn't just a standard rebuild. It is a breathless sprint toward a championship. The NFL window is a brutal, unforgiving reality. It is that fragile, fleeting period where a franchise has the exact right mix of talent, coaching, and desperation to actually win a Super Bowl. And it does not last. The salary cap eventually catches up to you. Injuries derail your dreams. Dan Morgan knows perfectly well that Bryce Young is on a highly valuable rookie contract and that this defense is primed to absolutely dominate right now. He's looked at the fleeting nature of this window and decided we will not wait. He's pushed all his chips into the center.
Before we wrap up this deep dive, if you're as obsessed with the details of roster building and the tactical chess matches of the league as we are, you're in the right place. This is NFL Nexus. We need you to subscribe to the channel, hit that button to like the video, and drop a comment on what you thought about Morgan's massive free agency push. And if you really want to help us keep making these deep dive explainers, please support the channel by becoming a channel member. Your support literally makes this all possible.
$165 million committed in a matter of hours. Crucial draft capital spent to desperately patch a broken offensive line after a catastrophic, heartbreaking injury. A young franchise quarterback with the weight of the entire Carolinas on his shoulders. The board is completely set. The pieces are finally moving, but in a league defined by razor-thin margins, where absolutely everything can change in a matter of seconds, one chilling question echoes louder than the rest. Will this massive, desperate gamble actually pay off? Or will it be remembered as a catastrophic miscalculation that sets the franchise back another 5 years? Time will tell, but one thing is absolutely 100% certain: the Carolina Panthers are going to war.